wait it out. We may be delayed for a long time." It seems the bard knows a lot more than anybody else here. Did he already make this journey before? Well, considering he's been the guide all this time, I assume he has.
"Then what do you suggest?"
Roland remarks snidely, and I decide to step in. "Stop it, you two!" Luna is faster. She raises her voice and speaks in a reprimanding tone, upon which the two men break it up and look away in embarrassment. "We will not make any better progress if you two argue with each other." It seems she's also somewhat irritable right now. Nobody can do anything about the situation, so there's no point in feeling bad about it. I can understand that the cold weather and tiredness can do that to the human psyche. "How are you doing, Kami?" I turn to the two dark elves, who have remained silent for most of the day. She hasn't said anything all day because the cold must be traveling up her coat and into her cursed arm. Its surface area is quite big, but due to its shape, it can't be properly covered in cloth. Even though she has been saying that she's not freezing, she's shivering now. "I'm fine." Sniffling, the little dark elf tries to act strong. I pet her head and check her temperature with my forehead. It seems to be about the same as mine, but I don't know elven physiology well enough to be able to judge whether that's good or not. I look back and find that Daika has taken the opportunity presented by this short break to rest and is sitting on a jutting rock. There's no need for me to ask her to know how she's feeling. Is there an alternative route we can take from here? It can't go on like this. I separate from Kami and turn to the bard.
"The only alternatives are the King's Pass and more dangerous mountain trails that only trained individuals can climb,"
he responds, forcing himself into a better attitude since it's me he's talking to.
"No, there's another,"
Roland suddenly says.
"The Whisper."
Well, that doesn't sound ominous at all, now does it?
"No, it is far safer up here."
The bard tries to shoot down the suggestion immediately, but it's too late now. My interest has been piqued. What's so dangerous about that route? I ask the leader, since I feel that the bard won't tell me.
"It's a natural cave that leads into Raskolim, the old dwarven kingdom. The dwarves disappeared from these mountains a long time ago, and only their monuments remain."
Graham is the one to reply. He seems to know his stuff, too. "So, they're just empty caverns now?" Pressing the matter, I address all three men. This way, I can probe for their opinion on this path.
"Some people travel through it from time to time, but you may encounter the undead."
Roland, the one who brought up the topic in the first place, responds to my question.
"But with Chloe here, we don't need to be afraid of those, do we?"
"Then we should go there. Kami and Daika won't be able to continue in this weather." I gesture at the two dark elves behind me. It's clear that they're both freezing. And Daika's stamina won't hold up for 4 more days of this strenuous ascension, coupled with this deadly weather.
"What can I say?"
The bard buries his face in his palm and shakes his head. "Dangerous?" Kami suddenly asks and lifts her cursed arm out of the cloak, despite the fact that she must be feeling unwell. I doubt she's going to be of any help in a fight, but I appreciate the sentiment. "Don't worry, I'll protect you." I pet her hair and look her in the eyes with a confident expression. In response, she gives me a warm smile that could melt me away on the spot. "Of course, that goes for you too, Daika." The big dark elf raises her hand barely above her shoulder and waves back weakly to signal that she heard me. It brings a smile to my face. She hasn't said much today, but at least she isn't completely zoned out from the exhaustion just yet. "So, it's decided then?" I think my smile must be really radiant when I turn around to the others and await their answers.
"Yes, we'll go to the Whisper."
The leader makes the final decision, albeit with a frown at my enthusiasm. The storm seems to be only active above a certain altitude, so we leave its effects behind us towards noon the day after we decided to turn around. There's still snow as far as the eyes can see, but rather than a blinding blizzard, it's a winter wonderland. It becomes much easier for us to travel as we descend further and take a turn near the rock face we passed yesterday. Then, by the evening hours shortly after sunset, we finally reach the Whisper. When we approach the place, I immediately understand where it got its name from. There's a small cave opening with jagged rocks surrounding it like a set of jaws. The wind blowing through these causes an unnerving sound that makes my back crawl. It sounds like whispers in my ears. Sometimes, a larger breeze throws up the snow in front of the cave, making it look like a massive creature's hot breath creating a plume of mist in the cold winter air. I wouldn't be surprised if this was actually a living being, and we have to walk through its entire digestive system to… I don't want to think about it like that after all. Welcome to the Whisper. The bard, despite his initial aversion to the idea of taking this path, seems inspired by its sight. He heats up his hands by breathing into them and rubbing them against each other before he brings his lute to bear. Thyra descends unto the netherworld to reclaim her lost lover's soul. Returning the dead carries a toll, the pure tears of a goddess impearled. That blessing, unbeknownst to her, now gone, granted on a whim since taken in spite. He calls, she hears and runs to his side. In the land of the living, she wakes, alone. Kind of sounds like the story about Izanagi descending into hell to bring back Izanami, but it's also different, as it features mortals who are being toyed with by gods. As always, the bard's voice and musical timings are great. That was quite ominous, do you think not, Sigurd? Luna comments. That may not have been the best poem for the occasion. Yes, I agree on that part. We're about to enter a cave into a place that might seem like the netherworld, and the story makes it sound like we're not going to come out with all members. I'll make sure not to lose sight of either Kami or Daika. Senka's in my embrace, so she won't be going missing. If there's ever a reason to believe that things are going south, I will stuff the three of them inside me and make a run for it. While I don't know what kind of effect I have on the cursed, I think everything is better than immediate death. We'll make camp out here and descend tomorrow, Roland announces. It's already dark outside, and while it doesn't matter for an underground exploration, we marched all day and everyone's tired. Well, I'm not, but everyone else is. We use the time to gather wood, to prepare torches, forage for food in the surroundings in case there's nothing to be found in the bowels of the mountain, and, in general, just rest before descending into Raskolim, the remnants of the Dwarven Kingdom. If undead do appear down there, I can just use Libera Animar or Hasta de Lumin. Furthermore, Luna taught me about magic theory, even if she doesn't seem to want to teach me actual spells. Through her explanations, I came to learn that this half-elf girl must be an exceptional prodigy. She takes a long time to chant her spells because they're all creations of her own rather than the ones she learned from books or a teacher. While she does have some basic knowledge of lower-level spells like the obligatory Fireball and Wind Cutter, all the higher-level ones I've seen her use so far come from her own imagination. If that isn't considered incredible, I'll have to reevaluate the war potential of humanity. But if that's the normal way to go about using magic, then doesn't that mean I can create spells by imagining their effects too? Of course, I can't just test that out in front of everyone here, since, for now, I'm still a novice mage who can only use a few spells from the book Arcelia gave me. I already did enough with the magic I've used so far. I don't need to give people more reason to be suspicious of me. I guess when it comes down to it, I can just use the shielding spell I found in the Holy Scriptures. If it's light magic, they won't question me about it. Apparently, this particular spell protects the devout and innocent, which is quite vague, but makes me think of some kind of barrier. I hope that it won't kick out corrupted beings, but I'm sure that if I can use it in the first place, the two dark elves and I won't be excluded from its effect. According to the bard, the ancient name of this passage through the depths of the mountains, Twahogan Yatern, can be translated to two-headed titan. In the Age of Gods, two titanic beasts fought here and ravaged the lands. They killed each other, and their remains turned into the mountain range that runs across the entire kingdom. The bigger one had two heads, which turned into the northern range, while the smaller one fell towards the south, and is supposedly half submerged in the ocean. Both of their carcasses put together are now called the Kongensgrad. The space between these two titans became the King's Pass. We're camping in front of one of the two-headed titans' supposed heads, on the side called the Whisper. The bard tells me that the other side is called the Maw, because the opening is massive and looks like a titanic beast's open jaws. I'm a sucker for such lore. Tell me more.
Raskolim used to be where almost all the dwarves of Bliarath lived, up until 2 centuries ago.
As we sit around the campfire, the bard relates the history of the mountain to me.
They kept to themselves and rarely, if ever, traded with humans. But one day, when one of the few human merchants that did conduct trade with them came to visit, it was empty. There were signs of battle, but not a single body could be found.
That's really eerie.
There are only a few communes of dwarves left now, and they make their homes far away from the Kongenserven. None of them speak of what happened here.
The bard concludes the history lesson. It really sounds like something cataclysmic occurred, which might even have been their own fault. I would be really interested in learning more about the history of this place, and this world in general. But for that, I might have to tickle it out of a dwarf someday. The next morning, we broke camp at dawn and made our way into the Whisper. It has been a few hours since we started our descent, and the cave so far has looked completely natural. I'm beginning to wonder where the Dwarven Kingdom actually starts. We're taking a narrow path that continues into the depths of the mountain in an almost straight line, with few smaller tunnels branching off to the sides. There are markings on the walls to denote that those lead nowhere. By now, Graham has switched to the rear guard, while Roland and the bard are leading the way, just like they did in the catacombs during the annual cemetery clearing quest. Each of them is carrying a torch, while Luna is using her staff to illuminate the center where us girls are walking. The bard seems to be keeping track of time somehow since he calls for breaks periodically. At one point, we've gone so deep underground that little fresh air circulates inside, and it's becoming increasingly harder to breathe. While the 3 men and I are fine, the less sporty types, Luna and Daika, are having a hard time. Unexpectedly, Kami seems to be holding up really well too. If keeping your staff raised all the time tires you, I can take over, I suggest to Luna, but receive a strange look.
Mages do not lend their catalysts to others,
she says with a frown. Is that a tradition or a rule? Maybe each staff is soul bonded to its wielder, like in online games, so that they can't be traded? That would be absurd. I don't need a staff to cast magic, though. Tilting my head, I'm unsure whether to make a statement or ask a question.
That is because light magic can be cast as long as there is light, even if the source is only the moon, the stars, or even a small candle's flame.
Luna shows me her staff, and the 3 small crystals embedded in its gnarled tip.
This garnet is for invoking fire, the blue beryl is for channeling water, and the almost transparent quartz is to control wind.
you need a medium for every type of element you wish to cast. I see. That kind of makes sense. Although, I feel that wind is everywhere and shouldn't require a catalyst. And I don't remember seeing Halfton wielding a stand or a wand when he casts his earth magic either. Ignis. I speak, and a small flame appears above my palm, quickly growing larger and beginning to illuminate the surroundings. Luna's eyes open wide, and she gasps in surprise. How did you do that? She raises her voice, and the others turn to see what's going on. I don't know. I try to look surprised myself and let the flame in my palm fizzle out, acting as if I let my concentration slip. Maybe that wasn't such a good idea, to let them know that I can cast magic without a catalyst.
You surprise us at every turn, Chloe.
Roland comments and gives me a wide grin.
With your talent in our group, I think the Demon Queen won't be a problem at all.
I don't think I'm strong enough to face Mao Mama, especially since we both have the same type of body, and she had much more time to experiment and become familiar with hers. Even if I happen to be more talented, experience isn't something overcome so easily. Also, I'm sure she knows far more magic than I do. And I'll be standing against you anyway, if you ever get to face my mother in the first place. In either case, with this, I'm designated a torchbearer as well. Thus, I'm condemned to hold up my hand with the flame in it to illuminate the center of our small procession, while Luna rests and uses her staff as a walking stick. Ugh, I shouldn't have proposed this. Soon, we enter an area that looks clearly man-made. I didn't notice it at first because I wasn't using night vision, but the flickering torchlights reveal angles and shapes that can't be natural. There are cracked pillars, archways, and other structures carved directly from the rock. But, as expected, there are no signs of life down here. This way, the first day passes without any incident, and the bard signals us that it has become pretty late already. We find an alcove in the tunnels, which can be used for camping, and Graham piles up the firewood he and Roland have been carrying to make a fire. If they hadn't brought wood from the outside, we wouldn't have found anything to burn in here. Magic could solve that problem, and many others, but apparently nobody thinks of it. After dinner, we settle on the night watch before everybody quickly goes to sleep. While it wasn't as tiring as climbing the snowy mountain, everybody's nerves are on edge in this all-enveloping darkness, and the silence only interrupted by the echoes of our footsteps. The two dark elves and I can see in the dark, but it doesn't change the fact that confined spaces can turn flickering shadows into monsters that nibble at the edge of one's vision, as well as sanity. I don't seem that affected by it, though, which must be because of this body of mine. On the second day, we finally see more signs of the Dwarven Kingdom. The winding tunnels have stairs that lead up or down into rooms dug out of the mountain itself. There are many forks in the road, but due to the colored runes on the walls, left by previous travelers, it's easy to tell which way to go. I spot rusted metal tools from time to time, which travelers who went through here didn't choose to pick up and take along due to their apparent lack of value. Their presence tells me that the dwarves ran away with all they got, going so far as to discard their belongings in their hasty escape. I'm getting more and more interested in learning what really happened here. Still no sign of any living things, not even rats. During our journey through the dark, everybody's perception of time becomes more and more muddled. Without the bard calling for breaks, the meals, or nighttime, nobody would be able to tell when to do anything. I have to wonder whether he has some means to determine the time, or just has a good internal clock. This silence is mind-numbing, I mutter, but my voice comes out much louder than I intended it to. Kami looks up at me in surprise, and Luna turns around as well.
We should find a place to spend the night, the bard concedes, understanding that everybody's nerves must be stretched thin by this seemingly endless darkness.
How long will it take before we get out on the other side? I don't think anyone has mentioned that yet.
Judging by our pace, it will take more than 6 days to get to the mall.
He responds almost immediately, apparently having done the math in his head beforehand. But 6 more days in this darkness will be quite taxing on everybody's psychological state.
Let's rest up well and continue on faster tomorrow.
Roland encourages everyone with a smile, acting as a proper leader should. We soon find a set of doors that lead into a room filled with broken shelves and crumbling wood. This may have been a storage room for firewood, but there isn't much of it left now.
Oh, there is water here.
The bard suddenly calls out to us and points his torch into a corner of the room. From a crack in the wall, a small trickle is flowing into a puddle at the bottom, which looks clear enough for drinking.
Let me check if it's potable.
Graham dunks a finger into the water and licks it, before nodding.
Yes, this is fresh water.
While we still have some animal skins filled with water, I feel like they wouldn't have lasted us through the entire journey down here. It's fortunate that we found this spring, and I hope we'll be able to find more such water sources throughout Raskolim. With newfound vigor, the party makes camp and has a dinner that tastes ever so slightly better than usual. Chapter 23. Escape through the dark. I wake up to Luna shaking me lightly. Apparently it's time for us to move on, rather than an emergency. I sit up and look around sleepily, remembering that I'm not a morning person when woken up unnaturally. For the past weeks, I got up on my own before anyone had to shake me, but today it seems I was just a little bit off. It's the 6th day of our descent into the kingdom under the mountain, and according to the bard, today we will finally see the actual city of Raskolim. So far, we've only been moving through tunnels used by the dwarven miners. Looking down at my side, I find Kami lying next to me, as she always does. I stroke her hair before bending down to her ear and whispering, "Wake up." Her eyes flutter open sleepily, and she looks up at me before smiling. If we were alone, I would cuddle her right now, and potentially do some more. Turning to my other side, I wake Daika up in the same manner. Unlike her older sister's graceful reaction, she jerks up into a sitting position in surprise and looks around in confusion before realizing where she is. Can't we skip today? She lies back down on her blanket, muttering in a sullen tone. In the past few days, she had gotten quite used to talking back like that every now and then, since the journey isn't as exhausting as it was when we were ascending the mountain. At that time, she didn't even want to waste a breath on saying anything she knows is pointless. I wish, but look on the bright side. Tomorrow, we'll be out of here. Patting her shoulder, I stand up myself and help with the preparations for breakfast.
Let's go.
Roland nods when we're all packed up and ready to depart. Leading the way with a torch, he pushes open the door to the hallway outside, revealing endless darkness rather than a wall on the other side. The scenery has changed by quite a bit recently. While we used to be walking through only tunnels, for the latter half of yesterday, we've been moving alongside a chasm that seems to disappear into unfathomable depths. There are crumbled wooden frameworks above and below us, suggesting that this area was under development up until the dwarves left.
This is the fastest way, according to the markers. There are others which are wider and have more secure footholds for carts and carriages to pass through.
The bard explains as we pass a section where the ledge is just barely wide enough for the big man to walk straight on. Why didn't we choose those wider paths? Daika complains, her legs shaking as she leans on me. It seems she has a fear of heights, as she tries her best not to look down into the abyss. I can't fault her for that. While my aversion to it isn't so extreme that I can barely stand on my own, my knees still feel weak when I stand right on the precipice. Because it would take us almost a whole day longer. With a look of sympathy, the bard responds to Daika's rhetorical question. She knows that we can't afford to take detours, and it's not like this route is that dangerous. Shortly after our lunch break, we finally walk out into a vast hallway. It's wider than anything we saw before, and to our right, there's a giant archway leading into impenetrable darkness. Just beyond here is the great city of the dwarves. With the pride of a guide showing foreigners a place of interest in their home country, the bard gestures forward past the archway. When we pass through it, he turns to Luna. I think we can go for a little more light here, if you would please, Luna. She does as she's asked and wordlessly turns the flame atop her staff up. It illuminates our surroundings and reveals a seemingly impossible tall cave, held up by titanic pillars cut from the very mountain itself. Inside those pillars are windows, beyond which only blackness lurks. I assume that these are like multi-story apartment buildings in which the dwarves used to live. I can't even begin to imagine what this place must have looked like when it was illuminated by thousands of lights, the streets bustling with life as the dwarves went on their daily businesses. Welcome to the city of Rasgolim. Stretching his arms out in an all-encompassing gesture, as if presenting a landscape, the bard states with meaningful gravity. We walk out into the halls, slowing down our march to take in the sights that come into view under Luna's light. The wooden doors to the houses all around us are broken down and crumbling from old age. They're at a height barely enough for me to stand upright in, but that's plenty of space for the dwarves. The ones I saw in Hofsgarden were only about as tall as Senka. Suddenly, a familiar rattling sound comes from all around us. Our wonder at the view of this magnificent city is blown away and instantly replaced by alarm. Undead. Roland draws his sword and looks around. I turn to the closest source of the noise and find that from an alleyway between the stone houses, a few skeletons are slowly moving towards us. They're taller than any dwarf, so they must be human remains. Libera! I begin to chant the spell that will turn them to dust and free their souls. Wait! The bard shouts, but it's already too late. Animar! As I finish the incantation, a nova of light expands with me as the center and travels outwards. It hits the skeletons and burns them away, just like it did during the cemetery clearing quest. Huh? That was... Before the bard can explain his reason for trying to stop me, a high-pitched, nerve-grating scream echoes through the stagnant underground air. What was that? Graham looks around in surprise and turns his shield in every direction, readying himself to defend against this potential threat. The acoustics of this place makes it hard to pinpoint where it came from, so everybody's on high alert. We soon realize that it's no longer the first scream echoing off the walls. It's being answered by many others, and it soon settles into a chatter that seems to expand in all directions. From the depths of the halls, a deeper voice bellows something in a strangely guttural and foreign language before the noise of metal armor pieces clattering against each other rises all around us. I have a bad feeling about this, I mutter. Run! The bard shouts, and we spring into action at the same time as all around us strange creatures appear on top of buildings and emerge from alleyways. They come at us from all directions, and the entire mountain seems to come alive. With my night vision, I can see what they are. The best way to describe them would be bipedal naked mole rats. They have tiny beady eyes, giant incisors that are exposed, and wrinkly pale skin with few bristly hairs sticking out all over their bodies. Their heights are mostly around the same as those of the dwarves I've seen, some being smaller and some bigger. This fact seems to have allowed these creatures to scavenge dwarven armor pieces and tools for their own use. Many are wearing rusted chainmail or dented armor pieces, wielding all kinds of tools as weapons, even if they were not intended as such. As we run through the streets of the ruined dwarf city, the trampling of countless feet grows louder by the minute. When I look up, I see that mole rats are pouring out of the windows and the pillars, as well as the cracks in the building, climbing down the walls adeptly. The encirclement is quickly shrinking.
We need to get to the bridge of Enlace, quick!
Shooting his crossbow behind us while running, the bard exclaims. With so many pursuers, his haphazard shot easily finds a target. A high-pitched squeal confirms that he killed or at least wounded one of those creatures, but it's only a drop in the ocean of flesh and metal coming for our lives. Hasta de Lumin! I shout, and a spirit spear forms above me even while I'm running. In its radiance, the mole rats that come from our sides shy away with surprised screams. At such close range, and illuminated by my light, I finally get a good look at them, better than I could with night vision. They're hideous! Releasing my spell towards the front, I aim to open a path before us. It cuts a straight line through the air and pierces two of the creatures before detonating on the breastplate of a third. They were among the first to come out onto the road that we are following, and my spell deters others from doing the same. But only for a moment.
Quick!
Roland shouts, cutting a mole rat's head off while running past it. That seemingly casual feat of strength and skill causes the surrounding creatures to stop and fall back in fear. These small critters are many, but they're cowards. Then, the deeper voice from below bellows something, and all the enemies begin to move again as if shaken from their shock. It's obviously their leader, but I can't pinpoint his location because of all the squeaks and clanging metal. I look back and find that Graham has picked up Daika, carrying her while running as fast as he can. Kami has been able to keep up with me so far, and Luna isn't doing too poorly herself, despite her less than stellar constitution. Hasta de Lumin! Once again, the radiant light gathers above me before I release it towards our front. Once again, it pierces several of the mole rats and causes the others to shy away. But at this point, it's too late. The encirclement is complete. The houses, alleyways, and rooftops around us are filled with enemies. A huge army is right to our rear, and there are more and more closing up the path ahead. This spell is pretty bad for area of effect. It can take out several individuals in a straight line, but does nothing for when the caster is surrounded. Then I hear Luna beginning to chant. I'm sure her magic is much better suited for clearing large packs, so all we have to do is hold out until she's ready. It will most likely take anywhere between 30 seconds and a whole minute. I just hope the party can hold out long enough. Makoto! Kami shouts, and I spin around. A mole rat wielding a metal spike has emerged from a crack in the ground and is jumping at me. The little dark elf throws her crab claw around and slaps it out of the air. The little creature is confused, but doesn't look hurt, as it shakes its head to regain its composure. Then it opens its mouth and screeches in a high-pitched tone threateningly before charging at us again. Before I can react, Kami swings her cursed arm again. Since the creature is now moving along the ground and already gauged the previous hit as harmless, it doesn't try to dodge. Instead, it attempts to take it with its rusted breastplate. This time, its feet leave the ground as it's sent flying back into its pack. Wait, that hit just now looked stronger. From the encirclement, another mole rat gathers its courage and charges forward. Kami lets her right arm crash down from above. Apparently, having misjudged her reach, the creature takes it directly on its head. A cracking sound emerges from its neck, and it falls to the ground lifelessly. Don't tell me. Before I can pay further attention, Graham lets Daika down right next to me before bringing his shield forward just in time to repel a larger mole rat coming at the party from the rear. In fact, this one is almost as tall as I am. When I look into the darkness, I finally notice that among the encirclement, many much larger figures loom. Some of them are as tall as the big man, with muscular bodies to match, towering over the others of their kind like adults would over children. They aren't moving just yet, but I don't think any of the humans would be able to deal with those. Are these small ones actually only children? Roland is using his torch as a deterrent on one side while swinging his sword on the other, trying to cover as much space as possible. The bard is doing the same, having drawn his short sword and using it to threaten the enemies that are inching closer. Reloading the crossbow under these circumstances is pretty much impossible, so it's a good call. Graham is using both his stature and his massive shield to hold our back, and Daika has put down her backpack and taken out vials and flasks of chemical substances, mixing them together hastily. Even under these circumstances, her hands are unexpectedly steady in their work. She might be creating either an explosive or some chemical which can scare the creatures away. Then my attention is taken by a mole rat with shattered incisors and a bloody mess for a face flying through the air. Spinning my head around, I find that Kami has entered a battle trance, roaring vigorously while swinging her cursed arm. She has started advancing into the densely packed creatures, who have nowhere to retreat. Every hit seems to gain more and more weight, and at one point, enemies are flung through the air like rag dolls or splattered onto the ground, their bodies broken beyond recognition. Wow! I remember her hitting me before, but it was only once. There seemed to be specific conditions attached to that strength, or else I would have shared the fate of those hideous creatures. Maybe it has something to do with the combo counter or something like that, but that just sounds way too out there. Wait, this is a fantasy world. It's entirely feasible that a strange power with game mechanic-like laws exists here. I quickly look around, but it seems everybody is occupied on their own fronts, so they don't notice what Kami is doing. For now, I feel like they don't need to know. Ignis! For the first time, I chant it loudly, and a giant flame appears on top of my palm. Luckily, I had enough foresight to lift my arm high above me, or I would have burned my own face off. Throwing the fire into a group of mole rats that are trying to encircle behind the little dark elf, I burn several of them to crisps while the others clamor to get away. Catastrophe! Luna calls out and raises her staff. Her spell is done. It took even longer than the laser one, so I hope it's good. The fire and wind crystals embedded in the tip of her staff glow in their respective colors, symbolizing that this spell is using those two elements. From that glow, a ball of light flies up high into the air and explodes in a bright flash. The mole rats shy back half a step, blinded by the sudden light. The brightness fades and leaves behind a large flame from which small fireballs rain down on our surroundings. It's a firestorm spell, which affects a large area, perfect for the occasion. The moment the balls come into contact with the surrounding enemies, they explode and cover the creatures in flames. However, the original flame is used up quickly, and while it was effective in causing havoc and breaking the enemy formation, not that many of them have been killed. Just when I think this, an upward draft pulls the fire from the burning corpses all around us and gathers them back into an even bigger flame. That's a multi-use spell, just like the laser? I have to admit that Luna has the most destructive potential on the team, while being the physically weakest. just like a true glass cannon. She must have put all her points into spell power and none into cast speed. After the second deadly rain of fireballs, the encirclement crumbles, and the mole rats scatter in all directions, running for their lives. Even the big ones that were only watching, most likely for an opening to charge in, are retreating in terror.
Now's our chance. Make a run for it.
Roland shouts and pulls Luna out of her spell-casting trance. She blinks her eyes before swinging her staff behind us, throwing the entire original flame down onto the street. It explodes into a huge field of fire, which cuts off the path for any pursuers.
This way!
The bard shouts and leads us while swinging his short sword at the routing enemies to dissuade them from barring our way. Hasta de lumin! I shoot a spirit spear at those that seem hesitant to open up the path. Then I leap to Kami's side, grabbing her left arm. She spins around and swings her crab pincer at me, but I dodge just in time before taking hold of her shoulders. Snap out of it. We're running. I'm sorry. She looks shocked at her own actions, but I pull her along. Don't worry. I give her a reassuring smile. As I take that moment to look at the carnage she left behind, I suppress a shudder. Towards the end, those she hit were scattered into tiny pieces where they stood, instead of being sent flying, practically disintegrating from the force of the impact. Damn, that was close. Cold sweat is forming on my forehead at the thought of what would have happened to my body if she had hit me just now. Daika! I find that she seems to have finished mixing her concoction, but there's no point in using it for the time being. Take Senka! Without waiting for her reply, I place the doll girl in her free hand while lifting her backpack from the ground. She looks at her new luggage with a surprised expression, but immediately begins to run after Roland and the others. Big man, come on! I wait for Graham, who is taking his time strapping his shield over his backpack so that he can run faster.
Coming!
Graham responds while turning around one last time to make sure nothing is pursuing us through the wall of fire before joining up with Kami and me. Suddenly, the angered voice of the mole rat leader resounds through the caverns, and I hear whirring sounds coming from the rear. Several metallic impact noises on Graham's shield confirm that they're shooting at us with bows. Luckily, none reach us since we were running forward, and the big man isn't hit anywhere other than on his shield. I have to wonder how almost blind mole rats can use projectile weapons, but I won't question it. They aren't hitting anything, and that's the important thing right now. I think now is the time to use that light shielding spell. There will be another volley, and this time their aim might be better. The incantation is really a mouthful, and I feel like I'll bite my tongue while trying to speak it on the run, but under the current circumstances, I have to try nonetheless. Spiritia sanctia servas eon circon meas! I don't know what I should be doing when I finish, so I throw up an arm. From my chest, a sphere of faint light expands, covering me, Kami, and Daika before me. It's a bubble, which travels with me as its center. It worked! Everyone, get inside here! It doesn't encompass the whole party on its own, but the space inside is just big enough for the other members to join us. Roland and Luna look at me in wonder, probably thinking why I didn't use this earlier. Actually, it just slipped my mind until the arrows started coming. A huge number of ripples move across the shield bubble, and I realize that hundreds of arrows just bounced off of it. If I hadn't used this when I did, everybody here would have been turned into pincushions. I don't know how many hit points this shield has, or how long it lasts, but it doesn't seem to break under the constant rain of arrows and other projectiles that come down on us. I just hope it'll hold out for as long as necessary. All around us, the mole rats are beginning to appear on rooftops and stream out of houses. Apparently, they already encircled the barrier of fire Luna left behind. I can see that they're easily keeping pace with us, holding their weapons in their powerful jaws while running on all fours. "The bridge is just past the city," the bard shouts while running and points forward. We're following a mostly straight path, which seems to have been the main street of Raskolim. With my night vision, I can tell that in the far distance there's a wall, which marks the end of the giant cave that houses a dwarven city. "We can make it!" As if to mock the bard's hopes, a roar echoes through the entire cavern and seems to shake the very foundations of the mountain. Everybody comes to a rumbling stop, and the shield bubble disappears with unfortunate timing. I can't tell whether it was affected by that roar, or its duration just ran out naturally. The mole rats begin to cheer, so it must be something from their side. "What was that?" Roland looks around with his sword at the ready. He must realize that his weapon is wholly inadequate to deal with whatever can create that kind of sound. "That is their queen." Unexpectedly, the bard has an answer. "You know what these creatures are?" I find myself asking him with a hint of suspicion. Why didn't he say anything earlier? He was against going through Raskolim, most likely knowing that it's dangerous because of these mole rats living in the city's ruins. If he had only told us, we most likely would have decided against going through here. "They are the Grey Baron, an ancient race that has been living underground in these mountains long before humans walked these lands and the dwarves made these caverns their homes." He speaks while looking at the enemies beginning to rally. "Over the years, there have been very few encounters with them, but never have they mobilized like this." I'm sorry. I drew them toward us with that needlessly large-scale Libera Animar spell. They didn't notice us when we were only walking around with Luna's light. But what's done is done. Getting out of here is more important than placing the blame. Opening the scripture of Balis, I look for a spell I used to think of as useless before. It illuminates the area around the caster, which is safer than the open flame from Ignis. Other than that, I didn't see any meaning in it, since the fire spell achieves the same effect, and I can see in the dark anyway. "Circo Luceo!" I shout, and an explosion of light spreads out from my body. With my unnecessarily huge magic output, what's supposed to be a sphere of faint illumination that surrounds me becomes something akin to a subterranean sun.
Whoa!
The others in the party cover their eyes in surprise, but since they weren't looking directly at me, they aren't completely blinded. But the Grey Baron were staring us down in the twilight of the weak torches, so the effect is much more profound. Pained squeals and high-pitched screams come from all around us, as the creatures of the dark had their retinas burned away as if they looked directly into a midday sun. They claw at their eyes and stagger about, running into each other in the ensuing confusion. "Go!" Roland isn't one to waste opportunities when he sees them, so he pulls Luna along, who's still blinking her eyes from the flashbang. The entire party immediately starts to move once again, and we run past the dazed creatures through the streets of Raskolim. I don't know how often this will work, so we really need to get clear of the encirclement as quickly as possible. "There is the bridge of Enlace," the bard announces in a hopeful tone and increases his pace. When I look in the direction of where he points, I can see that there's a pretty narrow bridge leading across a deep chasm. It's only wide enough for a single horse-drawn cart to cross, though it must have been somewhat spacious for the much smaller dwarves. There are no Grey Baron on the small platform on the other side, as far as I can tell. Just beyond that platform is a massive gate, similar to the one we passed through to reach the dwarven city. That must be the exit. The earth-shattering roar from before echoes through the entire mountain once again, and this time it sounds much closer. When I turn around, I see a massive naked mole rat in the distance coming after us on all fours. It's even bigger than the cyber dinos I saw on the Dark Continent. That must be their queen. Fresh pursuers who weren't directly affected by the solar flare are beginning to close in from all sides once again, and the path to the bridge is about to be cut off. Arrows are coming from behind us as well, though Graham does his best to block them with his giant shield. While I can understand that getting onto the bridge will make it so not as many can pursue us, they still run faster than humans do. Even if we make it across, they'll just follow us and catch up in no time. Hasta de Lumin! I shoot a light spear through the ranks that are closing up before us, causing them to scatter again. That was barely enough to let us break through. Roland slashes his way through the few Greyburn that still bar the way onto the bridge, and the party begins to run across it. I look back and see that our pursuers are practically already gnawing at Graham's heels. But what chills me to the bone is their queen, who has almost caught up. It's much faster than any of the others due to its size, and it doesn't look like it will stop because of the relatively small bridge. If that thing barrels through us, we'll fall into the seemingly endless abyss below. The bard turns around at the last third of the bridge and shoots a crossbow bolt at the giant Greyburn queen. It sticks her right in the shoulder, but she doesn't even flinch and continues on like it was just a mosquito bite. Her hide is too thick for something tiny like that to cause any significant harm. We keep running, and I see Roland, Luna, and Daika making it across to the other side safely. I let go of Kami's hand, waving for her to go ahead first, before turning to see how Graham is doing. He's the slowest of our party because of the amount of luggage he's carrying, as well as the giant shield on his back. Hasta de Lumin! I'm beginning to feel dumb for having to chant this every time, like a character calling her attacks. Releasing the spirit spear straight at the mole rat queen's forehead, I hope that it will pierce through her just like it did against all the smaller ones. But she's unexpectedly nimble for her size and dodges the spear by lowering her body to the ground, barely slowing down. Still, it buys Graham enough time to catch up with us, and I continue to run alongside him. We pass by the bard, who isn't moving from his spot, and I spin my head around in surprise. What is he trying to pull? Everybody crosses the bridge, and we look back to see that he has exchanged his crossbow for his lute, playing a note that echoes into the chasm below. The returning sound creates the illusion of a ghostly orchestra rising from the depths to join him. At the dissonant music, the giant Greybear queen, who has made it to the center of the bridge, stops once again and stares at him from a distance in careful curiosity. Don't tell me he's actually really powerful and is going to use some sound-based magic to stop her and the entire army behind her from crossing the bridge? There was never any sign of that. Go, my friends. I shall stop them here. He calls out to us while strumming his lute more and more fervently, a fearless expression on his face. The queen looks around and sniffs the air audibly before realizing that it must be a bluff. With a mighty roar that drowns out the bard's music, she charges forward once again. Wait, is he really just bluffing? What did you mix there? I turn to Daika and ask her about the concoction she made. An explosive, but... She begins to answer, and I take the flask out of her hand without listening to the rest. Putting as much strength as I can into my arm, I throw the glass bottle across the bridge. It lands between the Greybear Queen and the bard and shatters, spilling its contents. But nothing more happens. Huh? The queen comes to a skidding halt and sniffs the concoction before shying back half a step. Then it tries to smell again, finding that it's nothing dangerous after all, and continues to charge forward. Why didn't it go off? I spin around to the big dark elf and point at the broken flask. It wasn't she looks close to tears. What the
Fiend from the shadows! Return to the abyss! You!
Raising his voice and letting it echo through the cave, the bard spreads his arms heroically.
Shall not!
Oh, no you don't. I won't let you look cool here on your own.
Hasta de lumin!
I chant and put all my intent behind it. My aim isn't the massive creature coming down on the bard, but the bridge itself. Maybe I can break the stone and make the Grey Bear Queen fall into the depths. Shooting the spear into the ground just in front of the bard, the light explodes on the rock. He stumbles backward from the impact and stares down at the place where the spirit spear hit. There's a small crater, but the bridge is still fully intact. Damn! The massive creature turns to look at me, then at the small sizzling crater, before snorting in what I can only interpret as mockery. What? That creature's making fun of me. It didn't work the way I hoped it would this time, but she takes a step forward and cracks form in the stone where the spirit spear left its mark. Then she takes another step while swinging her giant claws down at the bard. He looks up fearlessly, ready to face his death. That's when the bridge collapses under her feet. Apparently, my shot was enough to destabilize it to the point where 2 more steps from her weight caused the stone to break. Squealing in a nerve-grating pitch and grasping the air impotently, the Grey Bear Queen falls into the endless abyss below. "Quick, get off the bridge!" I call out to the bard, and he reacts immediately. Turning on his heel, he runs toward us while the stone under him begins to crumble away with every further step he takes. He just barely makes it to our side, jumping the last stretch. Graham takes hold of his arm and pulls him in. Looking across the chasm, we see in the light of the still-burning flames from Luna's magic that the other side is teeming with Grey Bear, and they scream in unbridled rage because they lost their queen, and I can see some of them beginning to climb down in hopes of saving her. Then, an arrow whirs past my ear.
Run!
Roland sees that more and more of them are readying their bows and quickly pulls Luna and Kami along. Graham shields Daika, the bard, and me as we quickly make for the giant gate at the end of the platform. With this, we leave the great halls of the dwarves, the city of Raskolim, behind us. It seems that there are no Grey Baron on this side of the bridge. Even after more than what feels like 3 hours of intermittent running, we haven't encountered any more enemies. The leader calls for a break so that everybody can catch their breaths, although I'm sure we need more than just that. Everybody except for me is completely exhausted. Even Kami, who has been keeping up even better than the men, is sitting down and breathing hard. I have to act like I'm the same, but in my previous life, this would have been a breeze. I ran full marathons at top speeds, so the light jogging that we did, even while carrying all this luggage, wouldn't leave me panting just yet. "How long is it until we make it out of here?" I ask the bard, who's drinking from his water canteen while standing on shaky legs. "We still have half a day and 1 night before us," he replies with an uneasy expression. "We have to stay on the move." Thus, we set off again, but at least we go at the more reasonable pace of a brisk walk. The unspoken agreement is that we would only walk at this speed as long as we don't hear any pursuers. At one point, the bard tells us that it's already deep at night and that we should find a place to sleep. While we haven't been running anymore and pacing ourselves rather well, fatigue is mounting. Everybody's still soldiering on, setting one foot before the other even at the edge of total exhaustion. Even I can feel tiredness crawl into my mind as my mental state is deteriorating under the stress of the unknown darkness all around us. A high-pitched sound from behind immediately sets us straight again, and we make a run for it, stretching the limits of our stamina to the utmost to get out of this place just a moment earlier. Between sweating like a pig or bleeding like one, anybody would choose the former.
So, it was just the wind.
Roland falls to his knees as the sound is coming from all around us, accompanied by a fresh breeze.
It fooled even me,
the bard comments, out of breath. His hearing is exceptional, but even he was on edge at the time, so he couldn't tell the difference between a gray bear's squeal and the wind blowing through the cracks in the tunnel. I think he doesn't look like he had a brush with death earlier, as he wears his usual smile. I feel like hitting him over the head, but Roland already does it for me.
What were you thinking back there?
Now that his perception of danger has taken a back seat, he's reminded of what transpired on that bridge.
Well, the situation looked quite dire. I was not aware that Lady Marcotte had such a precise grasp of the bridge's weakness.
He sounds apologetic and lowers his head, but there's still a relieved smile on his face.
She really saved me. Saved us there.
I sigh at his nonchalance. The others were quite worried about him, but I guess it's part of his nature and what makes him so special. They can't stay mad at him, which in turn lifts the morale of the party.
Yeah, you're a really great addition to our group, Chloe.
Roland gives me a smile that would have charmed me if I was any other girl. I just reply with my own. My priorities, Senka, Daika, and Kami, are all safe, so I'm content. I also learned something incredible about Kami's curse, and now I know that she has quite the frightening potential in that crab arm of hers. Luckily, the humans haven't noticed it, since nobody brings it up. I'll make sure to keep it a secret from them for the time being. All in all, that was quite the adventure. I finally understand the thrill of people doing mountain climbing, going deep diving in the ocean, and participating in all kinds of extreme sports must feel. Everything seems much more real when there's danger to one's life involved.
This was really an experience. I don't think anyone has ever survived such a close shave before. You'll have a great story to tell,
Graham comments with a wide grin and slaps the bard's shoulder weakly. Even the big man, a paragon of strength, has reached his limits. Indeed, the bard has the perfect job to spin this into a grand tale for the ages. I just hope he makes sure to mention my grand role in it. We choose to continue through the night so that we can put this mountain behind us. While there are no sights of the Grey Baron following us this far, we can't rest until we're out in the open. According to the bard, they won't leave the safety of the earth. It's the light of day again. There's a titanic gate before us, opened just a crack. Due to its sheer size, that small opening is enough for a horse-drawn carriage to pass through easily. Beyond it, we can finally see the natural light of the sun. The wind blows in the cool and fresh air, which seems to wipe away the memory of the sweltering staleness that was the underground, and the fetid stench of the Grey Baron that has been clinging onto us since our encounter with them.
The gate of Dasarod,
the bard announces, with far less enthusiasm than he showed for most of our journey. Nobody had a wink of sleep for a long time now, and even I'm feeling exhausted at this point.
Just beyond here is the mall.
I look up and try to gauge just how tall this is, but I can't even begin to imagine how this gate was opened or closed. When we pass over the threshold, I see that each wing of it is so thick that Graham couldn't touch both sides with his arms outstretched. The dwarves must have had some ingenious technology or specialized magic for this. The outside looks similar to the Whisper, but is far more extensive. The massive stalactites and stalagmites make it look like the opened jaws of a giant beast. I get why people came up with this name. As everybody breathes in the cold winter air, their shoulders slacken as all the tension leaves their bodies. We aren't completely clear of the underground kingdom just yet, but there haven't been any signs of pursuers ever since we crossed the bridge of Enlace. Still, I think we have earned ourselves some relaxation. This is the western side of the Kongensgrad. Judging by the light outside, and the fact that, according to the bard, we walked through the night, I would say that it's just after sunrise. Stepping out into the open, the world without walls and ceilings expands before me. A lush forest lies a distance below the opening of the maw, and the song of birds travels on the wind. It's peaceful. Over there. The bard comes up to me and gestures across the landscape to my left. You can see it from here. See what? I look over and notice that he's pointing at the ocean. No, that's not right. Due to our elevated position, I can see that in the misty distance, there's a shore on the other side. It's a huge lake. At the edge of that lake stands a sprawling city with a magnificent wall. It's impressive, even when compared to the demon capital of Arkham, although it's still quite a bit smaller. The entire city is arranged in concentric half-circles rippling out from a large bridge that connects the mainland to an island on the lake. Covering that whole island is a citadel made of white stone. The sun peeks over the mountains behind us, and the light falls onto the city, illuminating the palace's tallest tower first. I feel my breath stopping for a moment as I take in the fantastic vista. That is the capital of the Kingdom of Lairs, Kongenserven. Chapter 24. Kongenserven. The Isdalen Plains is a vast glacial valley that begins deeper in the Kongensgrad, somewhere to the south of the maw. It reaches all the way down to the Gletsjersøen, the massive lake at the edge of which Kongenserven was built. There are no remains of the glacier to be seen, meaning that the lake most likely formed when it melted. Many rivers flow down from the mountains and feed it with fresh water. The sheer size of the Gletsjersøen has given rise to some people claiming that it's an inland sea, even though the water is fresh and various river fish are living in it. Due to its natural connection to the capital, many cities have been built around it, and a fleet of trade ships are sailing the gentle waters at all times. We walk down the flank of the mountain, which leads down towards Kongenserven in an almost perfectly straight descent. The glacier has flattened the landscape, although it left behind many rocks and boulders that used to be trapped in the ice, scattering pieces of the mountains across the plains. Some have runic carvings on them, and others were sculpted into faces of prominent figures, according to the bard's explanations as we pass them. The sun reaches its zenith when we're on the final stretch of our journey right before the city walls. And what magnificent walls they are! Even from a distance, I can tell that they are well-maintained and manned with attentive patrols. The east-facing main gate, which we are approaching right now, is open and guarded by a group of half a dozen soldiers on either side. They're watching the people entering and leaving, sometimes inspecting those that travel by carriage, have a lot of merchandise, or carry weapons. The surrounding landscape has made way for fields, which lie barren due to the season. The harvest has already been completed, and the plain dwellers are waiting for winter to come down from the mountains, where it has already fully covered the summits in snow. The days have been growing noticeably shorter, too. When we approach the gate, the guards obviously stop us to ask for our reason to enter the city. Roland has a sword at his hip, and Graham's large shield can't be missed either. While Luna's staff is less conspicuous, the fact that it's a mage's catalyst is evident due to the gems embedded in its tip. The biggest problem is Kami. While her cursed arm hasn't barred us from any of the smaller cities and villages, the capital might have different rules regarding the handling of demonic corruption. And due to the still mild temperatures around here, she's not wearing her heavy cloak, which puts her right arm on full display. When she steps forward from behind me, the guard who first sees her draws his breath sharply. The expression on his face is a mix of surprise and mild disgust, but since he doesn't look alarmed, he most likely won't refuse us entry. He comes over to check on Kami's arm, puts a hand on the top of his helmet as if to keep it from flying off, before waving at a bearded man surveying everything from a small elevated platform.
Captain, you might want to see this.
He calls out to him. The captain wears the exact same suit of armor as all the other soldiers, except for a bronze embellishment on his right pauldron, which signifies his rank.
What is... Oh.
When the captain sees Kami, his words get stuck in his throat. An expression of pity fills his face as he looks into the little dark elf's eyes.
Poor thing.
Is this going to be a problem? Stepping between the man and Kami, I ask in a defiant tone. I don't like the fact that he seems to be looking at her like one would regard a lame pet.
No.
My attitude actually intimidates him a little, as he averts his eyes in embarrassment. I guess he noticed that his show of pity was out of line, considering the little dark elf appears to be doing quite well. Can we pass then? Taking a step forward and asking in a forceful tone, I try to cut this inspection short. We're tired from our journey through the mountain and would like to rest.
Through the mountain?
Raising an eyebrow, the guard captain gives me a skeptical look before shifting his gaze towards my companions.
That is right.
The bard comes forward and speaks in a calming tone meant to ease the tension in the air.
We went through the former dwarven kingdom, and I need to inform you that the bridge of Enlace has been destroyed. The Grey Baron did that?
The captain turns to the bard and scratches his rugged beard with a troubled expression.
We'll have to notify the other side, lest there are any others who try to go through that route and find themselves at a dead end. Could I ask you to come with me to file a report?
Yes, if you let my friends pass. I'll be glad to accompany you right away. With a nod and a sly smile, the bard implies his compliance comes from the aforementioned cost. The guards exchange glances with each other, but ultimately, it's their leader who decides.
All right, you may pass.
He furrows his brows, but judges that getting the information right now is more important than checking a group of obvious adventurers. Still, he turns to Daika, whom he most likely identifies as Kami's mother due to her mature appearance, even though she's actually the little sister, and adds a condition.
But please make sure that the young lady doesn't wander off on her own. In the capital, cursed people without their guardians will be taken into custody.
I don't intend to leave Kami alone in either case, but the fact that cursed people are being discriminated against like this doesn't sit well with me. But to expedite our entry into the city, I remain quiet about it and watch as Daika demonstratively puts an arm around the little dark elf's shoulder with a thoughtful gaze that tells me she understands the situation. Thus, with the bard staying behind to report at the guard post, we enter the capital. The bustling main street is wide enough to accommodate 6 carriages at once and leads all the way through the city, across a large square, to the bridge connecting to the island on which the citadel stands tall. At one glance, I can tell that this place was built to last. All the houses are made of stone, unlike in the cities we passed on our journey. The streets are paved and clean, and most of all, I can see that they have a sewage system judging by grates covering holes in the ground. The only other city I've seen this in so far was Hofsgarden, leaving aside the seemingly technologically superior Dominion, that is. Even though I thought that many things in this world were too much like a fantasy story, the architecture looks quite normal, especially the palace, which I expected to have an obscene amount of impossibly tall towers that nobody would want to climb in real life, appears incredibly practical in design, with only one tower that juts out at more than twice the height of the second tallest one. Our final destination for the day is the Adventurer Guild, to deliver the package from Ingrid and register our relocation from Hofsgärden. I doubt we'll do anything else after that for today, or just go to sleep after that marathon through the mountain. As we walk down the main road, I notice that the people are staring at us unabashedly. We do make for a colorful procession, with Graham towering above most people by a head, drawing the first looks. But after that, their eyes naturally stick onto Kami and her right arm, as well as on the beautiful Daika. Some also notice Senka, whom I'm carrying in my arms, and give me unpleasant glances. While she has gotten used to crowded places, the little dark elf is clinging to me and seems intimidated by the sheer number of people. Judging by the size of this city when viewed from afar, it should have several times Hofsgärden's number of inhabitants.
Kongen 7 has a population of over 800,000 people,
Graham explains when I ask him. It's really little compared to what I'm used to from my previous life, but for this world, it's a considerable number. Hofsgärden is considered a capital on the other side of the mountains separating the Slettermark and the Istalen Plains, but it only had 1/8 of that. When I remember the report about the Alliance army losing 600,000 soldiers, I'm awed by how significant of a blow that must have been to the humans. It was a number close to this entire kingdom's capital city's population. Also, the whole nation has about 14 million inhabitants. I don't know how big the kingdom is, but 14 million is quite a small number when compared to Japan. Judging by the living standards outside of big cities, and the fact that large-scale wars against the demons must happen frequently, I guess mortality rates are still pretty high. There don't seem to be that many old people, so the average age is much lower than that of modern-day nations. Overall, they don't have a proper healthcare system even when there's magic that can heal many wounds almost instantly. The main reason must be that light affinity is rare, and the church is keeping a monopoly on it. Our party is quite privileged to have me, then. The Adventurer Guild is located on the main city square, just like the one in Hofsgärden. It's much larger and looks much more impressive than any I've seen before, owing to the fact that this must be the central office of the entire guild network. The structure itself has all the makings of an official government building, with a set of marble stairs leading up to its two-winged mahogany door. However, the most remarkable feature is that to the right of the guild stands a large mausoleum seemingly cut from granite itself. All the other buildings around it were constructed at a respectful distance from its overbearingly monolithic shape, as if fearing that its contents may spill out at any moment. But the entrance is open, and I see people going in and out wearing adventurer gear.
That must be the entrance to the lost tombs,
Roland comments in an awestruck tone. He mentioned it before when we were discussing our relocation to the capital, and it struck me as a name fitting for a dungeon. Now that I see it for myself, it's evident that it's exactly what it sounded like. Somehow, I feel like I could clear it all with a single libera animar. We are not going there right now. Come on. Luna nudges the leader with her elbow and walks ahead. He exchanges a glance with the big man and shrugs with a resigned smile. The inside of the guild hall is more lavishly decorated than the one in Hofsgärden, with a hotel-like reception area and a large crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. On the right-hand side stands a gallery of statues, most likely featuring famous people from both past and present. To our left is the actual gathering hall, where long dining tables and couches arranged in circles provide a communal space. Roland and Luna head over to the receptionist to fulfill Ingrid's request, while I follow Graham towards the dining hall. It's past lunchtime, so there aren't many people lounging around in there, but the smell of food still lingers. Let's get something to eat. I look at Daika and Kami, and they both agree with nods of varying enthusiasm. The former, despite her appearance, eats as little as any normal dark elf. The latter is a prime adult specimen of her kind, except for the fact that she has a giant crab pincer in place of her right forearm, but she easily consumes as much as Graham does, if not more.
Shouldn't we wait for Sigurd?
The big man scratches the back of his head and gestures behind himself in the general direction of the gate we just entered the city through. Then his stomach grumbles, and he covers it with one hand while looking up at me with surprised round eyes. He won't fault us for starting without him, especially since we only had quite the meager breakfast after we came out from the maw. I grin at Graham and walk ahead. Since the path from the exit of the mountains to the capital takes only half a day, we decided to carry on so that we could rest in actual beds. That's why we ate a few dried rations on the move and skipped lunch to eat a proper big meal a couple of hours later. Needless to say, everyone is incredibly tired and hungry at this point, and even with a tireless body, I'm feeling mental exhaustion from staying up so long without rest. But for now, the smell of grilled meat is making my mouth water, and all thoughts about sleep are blown away by the prospect of finally getting some good food again, not to discredit the big man's home cooking skills. The two lovers join us shortly before the waitress brings the drinks and food we ordered. This establishment is on a different level compared to any we've been to before, featuring a large variety of dishes and quick service. Not long after we begin, the bard enters the guild hall, and Graham waves him over. He filled an extra plate in case the big eaters, Kami and I, didn't leave anything before he arrived, and pushes it over to him.
All right, it's official now.
Roland lifts his ale for a toast.
We're in Kongen 7, and we're here to stay.
We clink jugs and take big, thirsty gulps. As always, the dark elves don't drink any alcohol, and the same is true for the half-elf Luna. It must be a physiological thing for them after all. In turn, I drink enough on my own to cover their share, even though I'm technically still 3 years from legal drinking age in Japan. I died and reincarnated into the body of a demon, so there's no point in worrying about conventions from my previous life anymore. After all, I've killed humans too.
So, when do you want to go to the academy?
Roland asks during the meal, directed at either Luna or me. We still need to visit the Cathedral of Light and meet Arcelia Crooks. I doubt that we will be able to enter the Citadel without her written recommendation. Luna is the one who answers, since I'm having a mouthful of the roast potato. I didn't know the academy was located within the Citadel, but maybe the castle I saw was actually it. But I believe we should rest for today and go tomorrow.
I agree.
Swallowing the food in my mouth, I quickly add with a glance at Daika and Kami. The latter doesn't show it as she chows down on her food, but they're both exhausted after the forced march through the entire night. Everybody hasn't slept for over 30 hours now, and it's becoming visible in how sluggish they move despite their seemingly high spirits.
All right, we'll get rooms in the guild lodgings and take a good long rest today before going to the Cathedral of Light first thing tomorrow.
The leader makes the final decision on the matter. After dinner, we get our room keys and quickly separate into our groups. As always, Kami and Daika are staying with me, while the 2 lovebirds get one room and the 2 men get another. Tonight, nobody is thinking about doing anything steamy, and after taking baths in turn, with the 2 sisters going in together and then me cleaning myself and Senka, everybody heads to bed immediately. As I look up at the unfamiliar ceiling, thinking about the events since the last time I slept, excitement wells up inside me. The encounter with the Grey Baron was quite dangerous for my companions, so I shouldn't look back at it as some lighthearted fun. But if I hadn't died and come to this world, I would have never experienced something like that. Turning my head, I gaze upon Daika in the bed standing next to the one I share with Kami. Both dark elves have fallen asleep already and are breathing rhythmically. I'm sure they both could have done without this excitement, but it'll be an event the bard can spin a legend around. And, to me at least, being part of something like that does sound quite enticing. I find myself drifting into sleep as I stroke Kami's hair and listen to her soft breaths. The next morning, we leave the room and go to the guild hall for breakfast. The two dark elves look well rested, and the fatigue from the all-nighter marathon has disappeared after sleeping for more than half a day. But now, Daika is complaining about sore muscles and back pains. I have an idea about where the latter is coming from when I glance at her chest, which can easily rival Mao Mama's. Do you want a massage? I wiggle my fingers at the big dark elf suggestively and grin. No, it's all right. With a blush, she refuses my offer and quickly walks ahead of me. She's easily embarrassed and will make decisions unfavorable to her when pressed even slightly. From the tip of her ears, which are turning reddish purple, I can tell that she actually wanted to receive a massage from me. I want one. Kami tugs on my arm with her normal left hand and looks up at me with a straightforward gaze. She has been quite outspoken about receiving favors and coddling from me and is becoming increasingly proactive in bed as well. I'll give you one later, then. Although I meant it as a joke when I offered it to Daika, now that her older sister has asked me for it, I can only comply. I have a sweet spot for her after all. When we arrive at the bottom of the stairs, the first person I notice is Roland. He's standing at the notice board, already looking for jobs. I'm sure seeing the entrance to the Lost Tombs has ignited the adventurer flame in his heart. Hey, leader, don't forget our goals for today, I say as I walk past him. He spins around in surprise and blinks at me. Yeah. Scratching the back of his head, he follows me to the table where Graham and the bard are already sitting with Luna. It seems that they have already finished their meals and were waiting for me and the others. We quickly begin with our breakfast, consisting of eggs sunny side up, sweet bread and jam, and a guild special yogurt. I'm impressed at the quality and can't help but wonder just how much all this costs. The leader is taking care of the party funds after all. Then, it dawns on me. He was looking at the quest board because he understands that if we stay here without finding work, we'll run out of money quickly. I guess we do need to stock up a little before we can go to the academy with Luna. This party would lose both their main damage dealer and their healer. After we get the letter of recommendation from Lady Crooks, we can take a look into the Lost Tombs. I'm quite interested in it too. And casually remark while eating, "Oh, that would be great." But Roland's almost desperate quickness in replying ruins my attempt at tact. Acting like I didn't notice it, I smile at him while thinking that Luna must have it pretty hard with his sometimes thick-headed behavior. When we finish our meals and motion to depart the guild hall, I walk over to the quest board and take a look at the things posted there. There's one big list of items, most likely relics, that are confirmed to be in the dungeon, with some of them struck out. Most likely those have been found, while others are still missing in its depths. I'm sure that if we find one of those named items, this party could be set for a while and won't have to worry about money. It's highly unlikely that things will go smoothly, though, and like any dungeon in games, there will be more difficult obstacles the deeper one goes. These relics should be somewhere really deep, or they would have been found already simply because there are so many adventurers going in and out all the time.
Are you coming, Chloe?
Now it's the leader who calls me to move away from the quest board. When I walk over and join the party at the entrance door, he grins at me.
Want something interesting?
Yes, let's go for the Tomb King's fortune. It was the relics at the very top of the list, which looked like it was arranged in order of difficulty rating. It sounds more like a treasure hoard than a single item, but that's what makes it so much more interesting.
As expected of the Missy.
Graham raises his voice in laughter and pats me on the back hard.
Choosing the most difficult one from the get-go.
Lady Marcotte wishes to spread her name further, even before becoming known as the woman with all magic affinities. The bard strums his lute once and speaks with a charming smile. I will make sure that your legend will be retold far and wide. Let us be more realistic. Luna doesn't look amused, thinking I was joking around. Yeah, even though the Tomb King's fortune is on that list due to historical evidence, at this point it has already faded into myth.
How many people do you think have tried to find it and failed so far? Many paid with their lives, you know.
Roland sighs in resignation. Well, this matter can wait until after we return from the Cathedral of Light. I'll let them think I'm just joking for a while longer, and then hit them over the head with acting on my words at the time. They'll have to follow up on my actions then, since they definitely won't abandon me. The Cathedral of Light is a towering monument on par with the castle on the island, sans the tallest tower. Even from the maw, I could see the belfry jutting out from the surrounding houses, which are all around 4 or 5 stories tall. Intricate figures carved from stone adorn the arch above the entrance, and the beautifully ornamented wooden doors look like they alone cost a fortune. As with the church in Hofsgarden, 2 honor guards in full armor and wielding halberds are standing guard on either side of the entrance. I already know that they won't let Kami enter, so I ask Graham to stay outside with her. Out of all the humans, she trusts him the most. At the same time, I suggest to Daika that she should take a look around the city for any locations where she might want to set up her new shop. This way, they won't have to wait in front of the cathedral for who knows how long our business might take. With a worried expression, the little dark elf raises her hand as if fearing that we won't see each other again. We are inside the capital, so I'm sure nothing will happen. To take her mind off of waiting, she could go with her sister, though I'll leave that up to her. Don't worry. The big man will protect you while I'm away. I pet Kami's hair and allay her fears. We'll meet back out here at noon. When the overly dramatic separation is complete, we finally walk up the stairs to the entrance of the cathedral and past the guards silently watching us. I suppress the urge to glare at them, but remind myself that they're just doing their job. Pushing open the doors, we're greeted by the smell of incense. The interior is just as grand as the exterior suggested. Delicate stained glass windows with iconographic motifs are let into the walls periodically, and the sunlight shining through them creates colorful images on the floor. The ceiling is so high up that one feels dwarfed by its sheer size, instilling a sense of awe that is only adequate for this sanctified place. In the side aisles, both male and female clerics talk to each other in respectfully lowered voices. Citizens of noticeably different social standings sit as equals on the long benches praying, facing the larger-than-life female statue in the chancel. The woman is carved from marble and easily stands at 4 times my height. She has her eyes closed, and a gentle smile graces her lips. Her left hand rests on the center of her chest, and her right arm is outstretched at the height of her waist, the palm facing up as if sowing seeds. It's the religious gesture that Arcelia performed when she said her farewell blessings in Hofsgarden back then.
This feels a little oppressive,
Roland comments while looking around in awe. He has most likely never been in a building as spacious as this one before. Is it all right to just ask for Lady Crooks? With a hesitant glance at the clerics, Luna puts forward this question. I know what she means. It would feel weird to walk up to one of the monks or nuns and simply ask them to call Arcelia for us. Please, leave that to me, the bard suddenly says with a reassuring smile, and a bad feeling wells up inside me. I hope he's not going to do what I think he's going to do. Mirroring my exact fears, he walks over to the most beautiful nun and chats her up while putting up a charming expression. I can practically see the flowers blossom behind him, as his perfectly white teeth seem to sparkle under no light in particular. She actually blushes under his gentle pushiness and looks positively flustered, so he takes it as his cue to begin properly flirting with her. I think he's annoying, but it seems his ways work well with the women of this world. If it brings results, I'll close my eyes to his behavior, though I will never condone it. Sister Birsa has been incredibly cooperative and agreed to call Lady Crooks for us. The bard returns to us and winks in mild triumph. The Saint of Luminosity has some free time now, after being swamped with work due to the demon attack back then. The demon attack in question occurred more than a month ago, and it wasn't even on this continent, so I wonder what kind of work she was swamped with. After all, it hit the Empire of Terminus, which is only a loose alliance with the Kingdom of Lairs, but I don't know the intricacies of the church, so it might have been just replying to letters from scared citizens and putting their concerns to rest. Miss Marcotte, it is a pleasure to see you again. Arcelia's voice echoes through the cathedral, and I turn to see her approaching from a side chapel. She's dressed in a pure white robe, just like the first time we met, but there's a white coif covering the golden hair she was showing off back then. As always, her eyes are closed, but it's obvious that she's somehow able to see us. The pleasure is all mine, Lady Crooks. I greet her with a bow and reply truthfully. She's going to get me into the Royal Academy, so of course I'm glad to meet her. How was your journey from Hofsgarden? She asks with a smile. I'm sure she was traveling safely over the King's Pass, since she most likely didn't have a deadline for getting here. He can tell the story better than anybody else here. I gesture towards the bard, sidestepping the job while avoiding to give away the fact that I never really bothered to learn his name. What was it again? It rhymes with yogurt, that much I know. My, your words are too kind, Lady Marcotte. The yogurt in question steps forward and remarks with a bow. Then let this simple bard recount the tale of our travels. You are really fortunate to have survived such perils. Arcelia leans back in her chair and comments when the bard finishes. We have relocated to her personal office, a neat space with a couch and tea table for guests. Her expression has been neutral for the most part, but she showed deep concern towards the end when the story got to the Grey Baron attack and our escape. The magic I learned from the scriptures you gave me saved our lives. Without the shield, we wouldn't be here. At least, nobody aside from me would be, since I'm immune to arrows. You have my deepest gratitude, Lady Crooks. It is only natural for a priestess of Balis to offer help to the virtuous and bring salvation to the wicked. She waves her hand and speaks in a saintly tone. If her view on who's virtuous and who's wicked isn't twisted, she shouldn't be a bad person. If this religion has members like her and elevates them to such high posts, then maybe it isn't as bad as they usually are in these stories, even if they are the enemies of demonkind. Excuse me if I'm rushing things, since we have people waiting for us. I glance out the window to see where the sun stands. It has been at least an hour since we came in here, since the bard started the story from when we attacked the illegal slave trade bastion and freed Kami. We came here to speak about the offer for us to attend the Royal Academy. No, do not worry. I can understand from Sigurd's tale that you really cared about the cursed dark elves. Arcelia nods with a gentle smile. Miss Marcotte, your compassion is most commendable. I hope that your love, which can even reach the pariahs of society, will bring about great change in the rigid views of the people. Thank you. I don't really understand what she means, but it seems that she can accept cursed beings much more readily than others within her religion. Her sainthood isn't just for show. As for the recommendation for the Royal Academy, I will write them for you right away. Please, wait a moment. With these words, the Saint of Luminosity takes a few sheets of paper and picks up a quill pen. Even though her eyes are closed, she begins to write without any issues. I've seen several people use quills before, among others the Guildmaster in Hofsgarden, Ingrid. It seems to be reserved for people in higher positions, though, as the receptionists at guild halls used dip pens with metal tips. The strokes created from quills look more elegant and refined, so maybe it's to differentiate letters by important people from common notes. When Arcelia finishes writing, she gently sways one of the sheets of paper in her hand to dry the ink before finally folding it up. Doing the same with the other, she puts each into a separate envelope, then closes them. Lighting a candle and bringing out a stick of red wax, she begins heating the tip of it until it starts to liquefy. Dripping the red wax onto the letter and pressing a seal into it, she makes it official. I can't help but watch in silent admiration. The practiced motions remind me of calligraphy and tea ceremony, which both soothe my usually restless mind. Even though I'm the type that prefers an active lifestyle, otherwise I wouldn't have been in the track and field club, I do like to indulge in slow-paced disciplines that would require more mind than matter sometimes. Here is an entry permit to the Citadel. You will be able to meet the principal of the Royal Academy directly with this. Holding up a separate piece of paper, Arcelia explains the procedure for when we go to the Citadel. You may be required to undergo a test, but I am sure you will pass without any issues. Even though she already checked my affinities, she directs this at me as much as she does it at Luna. After all, even if I have every magic affinity, I might not be able to use them properly. Still, I could use light magic without even practicing, so it should be no different in the case of the other elements. This is an opportunity few ever get. How can we repay you, Lady Crooks? The half-elf lowers her head and shows her sincere gratitude. Study and become strong, so that you can help those in need. Knowing that you will stay true to your convictions and lead a life you can be proud of is more than enough for me. Arcelia's radiant smile seems to cleanse the soul. She's expecting an unspoken promise, never to use what we may learn at the Royal Academy for evil purposes. Unfortunately, I won't be able to keep that promise. My existence itself is evil in the eyes of humanity. If she knew that she's helping me, a demon, get more powerful, her faith would most likely be shaken. This has been a Podium Audio production. If you enjoyed this audiobook, we would love for you to rate and review it. For more chaotic chronicles, check us out at podiumaudio.com and sign up for our newsletter. We promise we won't spam you. Also, consider joining our community of listeners, fans, and trolls on social media. We're active on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. We'd love to connect. You have been listening to The Tentacle Awakens, Book 1 of Demon Princess Magical Chaos, produced by Troy Odie, written by J.J. Pavlov, performed by Katana Jones, a member of SAG-AFTRA. Text copyright 2018 by J.J. Pavlov. Production copyright 2021 by Podium Audio. All rights reserved.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.